Hi, everybody. Charles Hoskinson here, live from warm, sunny Colorado. It's always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Well, we had a pretty interesting product update. We laughed, we cried, we all learned a little bit. 2.5 hours, lots of stuff. And I hope this gives you guys a good window into all the things that are happening. There's an enormous amount of complexity in Cardano, and Goguen is no different. In fact, that one slide showing all the interlocking dependencies and the moving pieces for it, and just the sheer volume of things that are going on is an indication of not only the quality of the team, but also the commercial reality of being a smart contract platform in 2020. When I co-founded Ethereum, our reference material was paper. We looked at dry code. We looked at things that Nick Szabo and people from the 1990s and 1980s wrote about. And whether you were a Ricardian contract fan, or you had programmed in Eiffel, or you understood things like FPML, basically it was an open field, which gave us kind of a freedom to just do whatever we wanted to do, but it also didn't give us a commercial reality of, well, who's going to buy it, who's going to use it, what do you need to do? The expectations in 2020 are vastly different from the expectations in 2013. And the reality is that there are massive deficits with Ethereum as designed today, which is why Tezos exists and Algorand exists and why ETH2 is being constructed. It's why there are so many different players from Polkadot and others on down who have deep and detailed opinions about the things we need to do. The ICO revolution hadn't happened. There was no notion of an ERC20 token. And we were in a just different world. We didn't have DeFi, any of these things. Okay. And now in 2020, if you are to be competitive and build great things and actually invite real use and utility at a scale of millions and billions of people, or government or Fortune 500 contracting, you need to have real good answers about a lot of different threats and things. So, for example, Marlowe is because what it does is it leverages 20 years of history from domain experts like Willy Bromertz, and over 30 years of history in domain-specific language design from Professor Thompson and his team. And it puts them together and it says, okay, for the first time ever, we're going to have semantical clarity between the entrepreneur, the developer, the regulator, and the financial services infrastructure, whether that be the banker, the insurance agent, the exchange, whoever that might be. Up until the totality of human history till today, we have never had that semantical clarity. All four of those actors speak different languages. And what we're doing with Marlowe as a DSL is an example of how you can unify and create a common language and experience between all of them. Today, right now, you guys can go to the Marlowe playground and you can start using it and start building things and start having that semantical clarity and work with us. And over a period of 6 months or so, that will continue to evolve. Templates will evolve, applications will be constructed, and those applications will work their way into Cardano applications, and eventually they'll become cross-platform and work on things like Fabric and other such things as we see industry and commercial adoption. But it requires a starting point, and Marlowe has evolved over a 4-year period through the hard labors of so many people to actually give us a great starting point. And you can visually look at contracts and talk about their design. You can write them in JavaScript. You can write them in the Marlowe programming language. There's a Haskell side to things. And you can see the power of this approach. Because of its design, you can prove things are correct. You can use theory that has existed for over 40 years, like SAT solvers and reachability, to actually show that you're not going to have a parity bug. And that's just one example of one DSL, of which many more will come. And the point of DSLs is to give clarity to people in the industry. So, for example, if we get into the health business and we start talking about medical records, there will become a DSL to broker their movement. And that same clarity and semantical unification will occur between doctors and hospitals, patients, governments, regulators, and business professionals. And they will now have a common language. So Marlowe is an entry point, and it's an example of how to build a DSL and evolve a DSL and bring the right people to the table. When we look to things like Glow from Mune, this is an example of a team that's highly motivated and intrinsically cross-blockchain. So when we look to the future and we say, what happens when Bitcoin gets smart contracts? What happens when F2 comes out? What happens when people want to build cross-blockchain applications? Wouldn't it be nice to have a unification language? And that's what Glow is basically all about. And by strategic investments in that ecosystem, what Glow does for us is it ensures that we won't be left behind, that Cardano has that, and all Cardano infrastructure can benefit from that. And Glow, in turn, will benefit from its embedding in our ecosystem. More users, more technology, and ultimately, because Cardano is the best, if you deploy in that direction, it's the best experience. When you look to Plutus, Plutus is the unification language. It's the conductor of the orchestra, and it pulls all of these things together. And there were a lot of design requirements with Plutus that were quite hard from a theory viewpoint. We really cared a lot about resource determinism. We wanted to make sure that it was always predictable, or at least as predictable as it can be, to know how much it costs to do things. Because at the end of the day, this is not a science experiment. These are not toys. Back in 2013, we had the luxury with Ethereum of just seeing what happened, and the market makes strategic investments, and they have to know how much their operating cost is going to be for their business model. We designed Plutus so that it would be one of the best programming languages on a long arc agenda of being a very practical on and off chain language to unify all the Cardano ecosystem. There are many objects in the ecosystem to operate and manipulate. Instruments of value like native assets, identity, smart contracts onto themselves, DAOs, off-chain infrastructure. And you need a conductor that's capable of living in between all of these things, and you need certainty that the code you're writing is going to work. This is why we based it on an ecosystem that has 35 years of history, and we as a company have invested millions of dollars in that ecosystem to modernize it and bring it into the 21st century, especially for things like Windows support, working with partners like Twig at WebAssembly support, working on projects like compilation to JavaScript so that we can ensure that's there. And our commitment is going to continue beyond that. We are a founding member of the Haskell Foundation, working with Simon Peyton Jones, and we're going to ensure that Haskell has compilation to ARM and that all of the technology that's required to keep that language competitive and actually make that language even more competitive will happen. And so it's very nice that Plutus is deeply ingrained in that ecosystem, and that makes it a perfect conductor language. Now, in the coming months, we're going to talk a lot more about our relationship to K and Yella. If you live in the imperative object-oriented world and you want to do things a bit differently than the way things are done in the Haskell functional world, then it makes sense to have an option that has the same principles as us, which is why we reached out to Grigori years ago and established a commercial relationship with him. And it's been the privilege of my career finding a way to resurrect that relationship. So in the coming months, we're going to talk a lot about how Yella fits into the Cardano ecosystem and the value it's going to bring, in addition to the value of Marlowe, Glow, and Plutus. Now, one of the single most important things about all of this is the native asset standard. One of the things we did not anticipate when we created Ethereum is just how pervasive the user's ability to issue an asset would be. We figured this would be an important thing. It's why we put it on a t-shirt back in the Miami conference in January of 2014. And we realized that from the Color Coins project and the Mastercoin project. And one of the most important things is that we have the ability to issue not just a utility token, but non-fungible assets, security tokens, and a litany of other instruments that hold value. Some ephemeral, some permanent, some with flexible monetary policies, some with fixed monetary policies, some from a central issuer, some from a decentralized issuer, some managed by a foundation, some managed by the community, some managed by fixed code that's immutable. And the point of the native asset standard in the ERC20 converter is to establish a coevolution of the technology and the commercialization of the technology, as opposed to just field of dreaming it and building it, and then they will come. So what we've been doing with ERC20 converter is using that as a way to create a conversation with those who want to migrate or build on Cardano, and thinking through how are we going to create practical standards with our native assets. We already have enormous advantages with this standard over Ethereum. In particular, the fact that your assets you issue on Cardano are treated the way that ADA is treated, whereas in Ethereum, you're a second-class citizen, where Ether is treated differently from smart contracts. This first-class citizen approach means that your assets will have the same governance access, layer 2 portfolio access, and infrastructure that ADA itself has. Easier listing experiences, easier time with hardware wallets, easier time with wallet software in general, better user experience, faster transactions, lower transaction costs, and then eventually for higher value tokens, even the possibility of paying transaction fees over the long term in the native asset itself, as if you were your own cryptocurrency. You just simply cannot do this with the design of Ethereum and Ethereum 2. It's a huge advantage we have in our ecosystem, and it's one that will become more pervasive over time. Now, Goguen has already started as a launch agenda. The very first update to enable some Goguen era functionality was the metadata standard, which meant that you could go from just moving ADA around to actually a whole litany of applications in the identity space and in the metadata space, some of which we're aggressively negotiating on in commercial deals, which we'll announce at a later date. The rollout of Goguen in terms of the system, as we mentioned in the presentation, will be principally done for the first iteration over a series of 3 hard fork combinator events, the first of which is beginning this year in November-December timeframe. And that's going to lay a lot of the foundations that will enable us to get to the second hard fork combinator event, which will occur in Q1 of next year, and we'll announce that specific date likely at the next product update. And then the third one will happen shortly thereafter. They have to be spaced this way because it's just simply too cumbersome on our developers and also our partners, such as wallet infrastructure and exchanges, to try to do too much too quickly. And furthermore, there's an enormous amount of work, as you've noticed on that slide, to roll out Goguen. Now, you have to do 2 things at once. You have to deploy the infrastructure, but then you also have to populate the infrastructure. And what's nice about the way that we've done things, as you now see with the Marlowe Playground, the population of that infrastructure is occurring now today. And with the ERC20 converter and the Mint testnet that's coming, that's going to occur in November, which means that that gives people time to start building and playing on our ecosystem in a safe sandbox, so that when they deploy it to the mainnet, they do it right the first time and they don't make an existential failure, as we have seen with the DeFi space. Because at the end of the day, once you go live, you have a huge adversarial surface, and everybody in the world is going to try to break the things you've done. So it's very important that you do it right, which means that you need time as a commercial partner and an application deployer to do it correctly. So parts of Goguen are indeed shipping this year. Some have already shipped, and we'll have another HFC event at the end of next month or early in December. And throughout the first quarter of next year, and likely the second quarter, we'll complete the other 2 HFC events, which will roll out full support for native assets, extended UTXO, the Plutus infrastructure, and the Marlowe infrastructure. In the meantime, we're also working on strategies about how we can ensure best integration of Glow and Yella into the Cardano ecosystem. And as you've noticed, there are 3 parallel teams that are working very hard. The Shelly team continues to upgrade the Shelly experience. Just today, we've received a lot of concerns over, for example, the stake pool ranking in Daedalus. Let me be very clear about something. There's no problem with the ranking software. The problem is the K parameter. It needs to be increased. And the fact that things are getting grayed out is an indication that the ranking parameter is actually working right for the first time. So K needs to go up. But there are consequences of that, and we need to improve the software to reflect those consequences. But it is my goal to get K to 1,000 before, ideally, D hits 0, because we really do want to have over 1,000 well-functioning stake pools. But by no means is that the end of the story. We need partial delegation and delegation portfolios. We need means for stake pool operators through PubSub to communicate effectively and efficiently with those who delegate to them. We need improvements in Smash. We need an identity center. We need a litany of improvements to Daedalus itself. Right now, today, there are more than 4 companies working full-time at doing just these things, in addition to the Goguen updates that are occurring right now today. And that research thread and that development thread will continue. We've already seen 7 CIPs, including CIPs related to the reward function. We take them very seriously. We review them, and there's an enormous amount of discussion about how to create a fair and balanced system. And we appreciate this feedback. It's a process, and we ask for patience. And we also remind people that we launched Shelly just at the end of July. And despite that, the ecosystem has more than doubled in size, and it's been growing at an incredible pace, and it's only going to continue. And we're only going to see our best days ahead of us. So good things are coming down the pipe, and it's becoming a much more holistic ecosystem, from performance improvements to usability improvements to better overall software for everyone. There's no greater example of that than what we've been able to accomplish in the last 3 months for the exchanges in general. We're really proud of what we've done with the Addressio stack, and we're really proud of working with great partners like Binance and Bittrex throughout the last few months. And we've had some certain challenges there, but as a result of overcoming those challenges, we have left behind an incredible enterprise-grade listing experience that continues to get faster, continues to get higher quality, and is secure and reliable 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we will continue investing heavily to ensure that that only gets better for all of those partners, whether they be an external wallet or their infrastructure like an exchange operator. And we've had a lot of wins also on the governance side. With the Voltaire Catalyst project, we have seen huge wins in participation, going from small focus groups to now over 3,500 people every single day coming into Idea Scale, competing for $250,000 worth of ADA with Fund 2. That's just the beginning, and every 6 to 8 weeks, that's going to increase in scale in terms of the money and people and the quality. When we ask what is our developer acquisition strategy, that's a major part of it, because people know that there's money to be made in building on Cardano, and that you have the right incentives to go realize your dreams and add value. So just as these frameworks like the Marlowe Playground and the Plutus Playground and other such things, like Glow come online and Yella come online, the ability to build will be matched by the ability to discuss what to build and fund what to build through a community-driven process that includes greater and greater inclusivity. For example, the next fund will include a voting center built right into Daedalus, in addition to the cell phone application that we've already launched to vote. And we will continue refining that experience relentlessly. That's one of our fastest moving teams. And I will remind you, we are doing this in parallel to the Shelly workstream and the Goguen workstream that we showed you guys today. Finally, there's Basho. Come the, not the next hard fork combinator event, but HFC3, which we anticipate Q1, I would like to include a sidechain protocol that allows the movement of value between independent systems through some form of blocking mechanism. We are currently examining and designing a protocol that we think fits very nicely into the way that our system works, with mild modifications to the ledger rules, if that. And should this be successful, then that helps with one of the pillars of Basho, interoperability. And then the other pillar is scalability. Rob Cohen is hard at work working with technical architects and scaling up a team to start de-risking the Hydra protocol And Matthias Fitzy and others are hard at work evolving the science behind the Hydra protocol. So we have seen great progress on all fronts to de-risk Hydra's rollout. And what's so beautiful about Hydra is it is our belief that the majority, if not all of Hydra, can be implemented in Plutus. So as Plutus rolls out, we have a natural constituency to run this infrastructure, the stake pool operators, and we have a natural way without an HFC event or special accommodation of rolling out Hydra. It's not really needed at this level of scale and capacity. We have an enormous throughput, already 10 times greater than Ethereum as it is today, and room to make it 100 times greater than what Ethereum is today without Hydra. However, as we de-risk this infrastructure, solidify the protocols, and get out all the kinks, what's so beautiful about it is that we will be able to, when the time comes, the community can roll out multiple implementations of Hydra so that there is diversity and there will be a natural group of actors to run those channels, as we have seen, for example, with the Bolt spec and the Lightning ecosystem on Bitcoin. The contrasting difference between Lightning and Bitcoin and Hydra and extended UTXO and Cardano is we designed Cardano for Hydra. Bitcoin was not designed for Lightning. And as a consequence, it's always more difficult for them to try to make meaningful progress. Whereas us, there's no friction in that relationship. It just fits very nicely through. So the roadmap is coming together. And Cardano 2020 has definitely started to evolve into quite a mature ecosystem. And what's really exciting is we're going from an ecosystem of potential to one of reality. And instead of asking what could we do, we're showing people what has been done, and people are actually doing things every day. Our commercial team is inundated with requests for coordination and cooperation and deployment. I get numerous emails every single day, well-intended, to very serious about people wanting to build on the platform. And we're real excited about that. So we're going to keep this steady, systematic, relentless march. As you saw with the enormity of the news today, it's business as usual. And it'll be exactly the same in November, only there'll be more. And every month, the velocity increases. We burn down the remaining story points to get these things done. And things are happening very quickly. And we just keep releasing and releasing and releasing. And it's a very different time than it was even 6 months ago. What's so reassuring is we continue to have the best community in all the cryptocurrency space. It's the final point, but it's one that I'm most proud of. You see, people get to decide where they want to live, what infrastructure they want to deploy on, who they want to work with. And when you have a welcoming, warm, and friendly community that is constructive and productive, and their job is to help you get to where you need to go, you want to work with those people. When you have a destructive or toxic community that's exclusive, hierarchical, and not invented here in their mentality, people don't want to work with that community. Money can't buy that. I don't care if you have a bank account with $4 billion or you're a central bank. You can't buy character, and you can't buy culture. You have to make it, and you have to earn it. And if we've accomplished anything over these last 5 years, from the 90 papers now and the million-plus lines of code and the incredible releases that have happened and continue to happen, we accomplished the greatest thing of all. We built a community to rival that of Bitcoin's. And I believe with that community, we can realize the dream in the coming years of Cardano becoming the financial operating system for those who don't have one, and giving open, fair, and free economic identity to those who need it. I am astounded by just how easy it is to roll these things out. They're super hard and complex under the hood, but they just feel right and fit right, and all the pieces are starting to come together in just the right way. And I'm astounded by the fact that when we roll them out, community members are there to receive them and take them to the next level. So thank you all for attending the product update at the end of the month. This was a real good one, just as good as the Shelly one. And we are now in the Goguen era with the first HFC event coming in the end of November. And we're going to keep pushing them out Every single one of them will add more capabilities, and I encourage everyone to check out the Marlowe Playground. Start building with it today. Things are happening really fast. When the Mint comes online at the end of November, start playing around with that. Start talking about the multi-token standard. If you're interested in a project, our commercial division's always open, and you're going to see more and more progress from all entities in this ecosystem and some potentially major announcements before you think it. So, thanks, guys. It was a good day, and thanks to the entire team that made all this happen. I'm real proud of all of you. Cheers.